Greetings, everyone. Welcome to another Brony Debates Live. Let's have a nice start to the weekend here. I hope you're all doing well out there. We got a pretty interesting topic today. Our friend SazerLite, who is in the chat, I believe, as a placeholder. I hope he didn't want me to out him like that, but or I hope he didn't mind me outing him like that. But anyway, he suggested this topic a long time ago, but we weren't quite ready to get to it. I wanted to make sure that we had our guests on that we have on today to come and talk about it because they know a lot more about this topic than I do. And, you know, with all that waiting out of the way, we're here. So let's do a little bit of roll call. We got Miss Lightning Bliss joining us again. Lightning Bliss hasn't been here, if I remember correctly, since the time I 1v5'd her and the other cringy Alicorn OCs and one Earth Pony, and kick the heck out of all of you in the Alicorn OCs debate. How are you doing, Bliss?
I mean, I don't understand it. If you hate Alicorn so much, why do you invite me back?
Because I have to prove that I'm not racist, right? I'm not racist against Alicorns. I have an Alicorn friend. Some of my best friends are Alicorns. I'm married to one. How could I possibly be?
And you know what the crazy thing is?
What?
Why do I keep accepting it?
That is the question. You know that when you come in here, I'm just going to berate the heck out of you, and yet you still show up. It's like you're a glutton for the punishment. How are you doing tonight?
Down, I know it's a farce.
Yep. Are you having fun?
I'm tired. It's been a long day. We had recently we just released a new TF2 video back on Dr. Wolf's channel, and we did a little recording for the premiere. So eventually that'll be worked on and uploaded at some point, probably in a few weeks' time on Doc's channel. So stay tuned for that. But yeah, it was kind of an emotional premiere recording session. I totally cried because I'm a wuss, but I'm doing good. I'm recovering, so I'm looking forward to a chilled podcast, maybe.
All right, well, we'll see what happens here. I see Cordero being in the chat, being a troll as usual. He's the only one here who's a bigger troll than I am. And I see Ace. How are you doing? How are you doing, Master Code? We got SazerLite joining us, who suggested this topic a while ago. How are you doing, Sazer?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Nice. And we've got Calbeck returning to the show. And Calbeck has a lot of experience with the older generations of My Little Pony as well. How are you doing tonight, sir?
Aloha.
Mm-hmm. So, Sazer, we've been through this twice already off stream, but let's do it one more time now that we've had some practice. Why did you want to talk about this topic?
I wanted to talk about this because, well, I guess just the topic in of itself is an interesting topic because for most of the early years of the Brony fandom, there was just this very vitriolic, and I guess in many ways unjustified resentment towards the previous generations, G1, 2, and 3, of if anything that was not G4.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of wanted to address that and, talk about, is it still prevalent? Has it died down? And I also wanted to bring this up because, I have a friend of mine who I've known for quite some time, and he's a big fan of the previous generations of My Little Pony, Al1701. He did a lot of G1 reviews. Check him out if you want.
Mm-hmm.
But let's just say that the Brony fandom's resentment towards the previous generations kind of gave him the impression that the Brony fandom was just well, to put kindly, not good. Yeah, he doesn't view the Brony fandom very fondly. So yeah, he's a very much a Gen 1er through and through. But I still love him for that.
Right. I didn't even know there were Gen 1ers for previous generations. They're out there. There's plenty. Yeah, at least the ones that know that friendship is magic exists. Anyway, before we get much deeper into it, I gotta shout out all of my very generous supporters on Patreon. Thank you very much for making my bills easier to pay. and the content easier to produce, even though I have an abysmal upload schedule. I promise I'm working on fixing that. Especially those on the $10 and up tier, especially Princess Heather Blossom, Shady Oak Ministries, Sid McConroy, Autoknight, Emerald Spencer, Senko, Kyle Christensen, DJ Skywalker, Rein-Kun, Morningstar, Pony Cordero, QFlash, Billy Henline, Alden MacManx, EasyModeGamer, Kanto Acrylic VA, and Dark Malcontent, author of the Metaverse series. Please check out all their links in the description. And tonight we are actually fundraising for Princess Heather Blossom because her cat Knife passed away a few weeks ago and left us with a pretty hefty financial burden there, her especially, and she definitely needs as much help as we can get getting those bills paid off. So if you enjoy tonight's show and have a few bucks you wouldn't mind throwing her way to help with that, that would be greatly appreciated. You let me know if you do donate to that. I'll do anything I can to repay the favor. Anyway, now that we're into that, let's talk ponies here. So, earlier we were talking about how there's just a general distaste for people that are coming into a new iteration of a franchise. They generally have a distaste for the previous versions. I believe that's something that Calbeck was saying. Is that about right, sir?
More or less. It's what I was saying before is that when you have somebody who is a brand new fan to something that even they thought that they would never be a fan of, and they just jump in with both feet, it's the religious recruit effect that it becomes the be-all, end-all, and anything that they see as possible competition becomes the enemy. It's a knee-jerk reaction in many ways.
Okay. Are we sure that that's not just because the previous iterations are not as high of a quality and thus deserve less?
That would contribute to it. But what I'm talking about is the over-the-top nature that really set a lot of people off. There's a difference between being genuinely critical and considerate of something and just tearing it apart because it's the other thing.
And in your experience coming from older versions of My Little Pony to becoming a Brony, did you see a lot of that?
Actually, no, for the most part, at least not initially. But then I didn't tend to run into circles where a lot of the people who were doing that, who were openly and specifically trashing the older stuff, especially if they were doing it a lot of them were doing it because they were trolling. People also forget that a big chunk of the early fandom basically came over from 4chan, because 4chan's ML, not even the MLP board, it was a cartoon board. They had heard some bashing about it by somebody complaining about Rainbow Dash being a quote-unquote obvious lesbian and then complaining about that. And so it was like, wait, I got to look into this. So all these 4chan people go over and find that they liked the show. And this in and of itself became a huge thing on 4chan where those new fans would get trashed. And so a lot of this goes to that sort of vitriol in the middle, where the early fandom had a big core of itself that was in the middle of this fight over whether or not it was even a good thing to be an MLP fan at all. And
yeah,
so there's
totally
kind of
agree.
differentiation between G4 and everything went before it to say, I'm not one of those.
Sazer, did you want to add anything onto that?
Yeah, I was about to say, I do agree. I think there was a lot of truth to that, regarding 4chan and everything. But I also think just on a more general scale, I think a lot of the vitriol came from the fact that, well, it's My Little Pony. Let's not forget that. Mm-hmm. And if someone were to say to these people, "Hey, are you a fan of My Little Pony?" that what immediately comes to your mind, at least at the time, was the stuff like from G1, G3.
Yeah, exactly.
A charming birthday, stuff like that.
A very minty Christmas.
Yeah, that too. But I think a lot of it was just came. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think a lot of it. I like to believe a lot of it came from a sense of insecurity. The fact that this My Little Pony, this MLP is totally different from the rest, and in a sense it is, but at the same time, it's still the same brand. And I think they wanted to get away from that. I think they hated the fact that they are in fact MLP fans, but they didn't want it to be tied to that old stuff because they saw that old stuff as, well, girly.
Bliss, what experience do you have with this kind of thing?
So, I was born in 86. The first pilot episode of G1 didn't come out till 1984. My mom was under the impression that one day she was going to have little girls. So she wanted to record some of these episodes that came out from Hasbro in the possibility of one of us enjoying the show one day. And turns out that was me.
Your mom was awesome.
Good
yeah,
foresight.
I love my mom. She is awesome. So here's the thing. I had a conversation with my brother at BabsCon this year. And he and I discovered some things about ourselves from our childhood that we would never have spoken up as kids, but now can talk about it as adults. So we grew up in what most kids of the late 80s, early 90s would call the pink and blue era, where pink was for girls, blue was for boys. It was literally in the toy aisles of Walmart or Toys R Us. Oh God, Toys R Us, that's a flashback. And it was viewed as wrong for boys to like little girl things. And yet, strangely enough, and this could be its own debate, but we won't go into it, but it's okay for me to like Godzilla and Dragon Ball Z and even dinosaur movies, but it was not okay for my brother to enjoy My Little Pony or Rainbow Bride or The Last Unicorn, which it turns out he did. But he never said anything. He never watched in front of my family. He would watch when there was nobody around, apparently, and he would keep it to himself because if anybody found out, he was under the impression that he would be made fun of. And he probably would have. But he would tell me later that, oh yeah, I was a huge MLP fan. And I was an even bigger Rainbow Bright fan because, yeah, I'm a huge Rainbow Bright fan. And so me and my brother were very close. And a part of me feels like I would have loved it if he watched the show with me as kids. But I can understand why he didn't come forward until now, because times have changed where this is okay. This is fine. This is not hurting anybody. And it kind of makes you realize that these generations literally are coming from a different generation. People need to remember that. G1 MLP came out during a time that was specifically targeting little girls. It was never meant for boys. And going outside that norm made society say you're wrong. It was a difficult time for anybody of the LGBT community, that's for sure.
So I could tell you from, I don't know how to frame this, just a very critical, I would like to think objectively minded standpoint that the reason why a lot of people don't like that stuff is because it was, for the most part, poorly written, poorly voice acted. Might have looked nice. I've seen, what most people call the highlights of G1 and the low points of generations 2 and 3. And I wasn't impressed. And most of what does it for me is the dialogue and voice acting. And this is what got me bad about a lot of cartoons, really, is I like it when people talk like when characters talk like actual people. Yeah. And so with that in mind, there's, the shows that I actually like could be counted without my running out of fingers. And almost none of them are from like the 80s, 90s era. And so the reason I think people like those things in the first place is They were watching them a lot when they were younger. They didn't know any better, and now they've got nostalgia goggles. So the voice, like I said, the voice acting wasn't there. The stories weren't. They tried to be there, but they weren't entirely, and the dialogue wasn't there. So it wasn't as good. There's a reason why G4 was good, and I'm pretty sure, you know, Lauren Foss came out and said multiple times, yes, I liked these shows when I was younger, and then I asked myself, hey, what if it was good? And then tried to make something that was actually good so that it could be enjoyed by families watching it together, so that, you know, when your 5-year-old daughter drags you down to watch this with her, or, you know, you got to babysit for whatever reason, then whoever is doing that babysitting can enjoy it as well. And then this all happened, right? And it's stroke of luck, lightning, who knows? But you guys pretty much hit the nail on the head, but it was a very roundabout way of saying is that we hated previous generations because previous generations weren't as good.
I can definitely agree and contribute to that point of yours, if it's okay.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, again, I grew up with the G1 and even G2, though even as a kid though, when I got older, I didn't like G2 simply because it was reminding me too much of real life, because it was focusing on girly ponies, hating on the boys, like girls only, boys.
You were
boys
about
rule.
that. You were about that age and would have been going through that kind of thing at school when that was airing.
I hated it.
Most people do.
See, Sazer, she calls it Gen 2 too.
I do call it G2 because it's G2.
Yeah, I'm holding back. I'm really trying to resist calling.
So we're gonna
Also, Brony, I'm gonna dissent with you as soon as Lightning's done.
Yeah, so we're gonna let Lightning Bliss finish, and then we're gonna let Sazer do his because he's got a good point, and then we'll come to you. Go ahead and finish up, Bliss.
Okay, so when I was a kid, loved G1. I was also very much an ADD kid. I also had a processing disorder, so language and communication and acting kind of went over my head. I was paying more attention to, pretty ponies running across the scene. That is awesome. They're going on an adventure. That is fun. I am older now. Fast forward to when I'm 23 years old. And I have kept my nostalgia locked up since the 5th grade, because by that point, girls would pick on you if you weren't into boy bands by then. And my nostalgia to rewatch the old series came back, and I sat down and bought, like, really cheap. I bought on DVD the first G1 movie, My Little Pony Attack of the Smooths. And I got probably about 30 or 40 minutes into it before I turned it off.
Mm-hmm.
And then I asked myself, was I on crack when I was a kid? Because the acting is atrocious. The plot is awful. The some of the characters are horrible. Like Lickety Split is just a terrible, awful pony. And I'm just like, I don't understand. Why did I like this? Everything about these characters I are either boring or spiteful or disgusting, and the acting is, even the animation wasn't even that good. I've seen better. And it kind of broke my heart, and I realized, you know what? Maybe it's just simply because this was targeted to little kids. I am no longer a little kid anymore. This clearly doesn't uphold to what I used to like as a kid, because I'm older now. I was disappointed, and then I turned it off and figured I'm never going to enjoy ponies again because it's not going to get any better. I've seen G3, and I just knew, okay, ponies is not for my age at all, and it never will be, because clearly if that was the improvement in G3 and G3.5, then there is no hope for pony. I kept getting, and that's when G4 comes out a few years later, and I keep getting advertisements for it, and I'm ignoring it. I'm pushing it away. I'm like, yeah, I see you, go away, because I figured it's just going to be just as bad as G3. Until finally, I just said, okay, fine, screw it. You keep showing up on my YouTube, so I'm going to watch you, and then I'm going to be disappointed all over again. Oh, and here we are. Hi.
So thank you for, reinforcing my point multiple times there. Sazer had a little bit of a point of contention with you. Do you want to go into that, sir?
Yeah, I'll say this much. I mean, well, first of all, I'm sure you've already. First of all, of course, My Little Ponytails is not G2. If you were to accurately describe it, I would say it's G1.5 because it's still the same generation. If you were to actually look at the G2 toys and artwork and everything, or even the computer game, it is vastly different.
Different universe, fight me.
Yeah, it's a different universe, a different character, but it's still the same generation, just trying to appeal to a completely different audience. And I will agree, it was very hit and miss with Tails. And also for the G1 movie, I will fully agree that's probably one of the weakest examples of what G1 had to offer. There are much better things that G1 had to offer.
Oh, absolutely.
Do not start with the movie. The movie is terrible.
Yeah, do not watch that movie.
Yeah.
Watch the first pilot episode.
Yeah, the pilot's definitely a lot better.
Oh yeah.
But the funny thing is, I'm obviously the youngest out of all of us here, so I didn't really grow up with G1 or Tails necessarily. Like, what I really grew up with per se was actually G3. My little sister had some of the VHS tapes. You know, A Charming Birthday. What was that one? Dancing in the Clouds? Is that what was it called? Yeah, but we had those, and I saw them, and I don't know if it was just because. Here's the thing: I'm homeschooled, so I I didn't really have that social pressure put on me, so I never really felt a sense of shame or embarrassment for watching this stuff, and I mean, I didn't love it, but I couldn't really bring myself to hate it either. I felt no disgust toward them. I just thought they were just cute, funny, adorable little things to watch. No, nothing great, but it's just something to, distract you. So there's that. And it was sometime after that I saw G1. My older sister brought a DVD, came visiting to our home. I think I was about like maybe 15 at this time, and she brought the first season of G1 on DVD, and I saw bits and pieces as they were watching it, and I was quite hooked to it, because up until that point, I did not think My Little Pony had anything to do with, adventures and villains and stuff like that. That never registered with me. So when I saw that, I was really intrigued. I was really interested. And then fast forward a couple years later, well, G4 comes out. And I was very curious to see where that would go. And I've said the story before, but I'll say it again. The pilot alone, just part 1 alone, got me hooked. And I've been a brony ever since. So I guess that's all I have to say at the moment.
Okay. So Calbeck had a point of contention with me. What did you want to say, sir?
Also with Bliss, actually.
Oh,
Although I'm half on board with Bliss. Now here's the thing. I was born in the 60s. Yes, I'm old. The 70s were my childhood. So I grew up with things like Scooby-Doo and all the cheesy, like, Marvel Superpower Hour and all that. All the toyetic stuff that really launched the concept of a toyetic TV show back in the 70s. By the time the 80s came around, and you started having stuff like Transformers and Voltron and just... I should also mention that the 70s was when you also had things like Kimba, Speed Racer, and Battle Between the Planets, which in Japan it's Gatchaman. So you had this kind of parallel thing going on in animation going into the 80s. So by the time that My Little Pony came out, I was watching things like Robotech, Akira, G.I. Joe. And My Little Pony actually slotted in well next to G.I. Joe as a contrast point. This is something that people forget. So by the 80s, I was in high school. I'm watching My Little Pony G1 in high school. Understand that. Nobody in high school in the 80s was watching My Little Pony. It was absolutely not talked about by anyone because it was for little girls, elementary school girls, if that. I don't recall anyone, absolutely anyone, the time that I was in high school who ever brought it up. So I didn't have to worry about it being a social issue. It probably would have been if it ever came up, but nobody talked about it in high school. So I'm enjoying this TV show, which to me is basically, what's the best way to put? I had a way of putting this before. This had a very Alice in Wonderland vibe. There was a through story about this little girl and her siblings becoming the heroes for this world of almost essentially helpless little ponies against all these weird monsters and all these weird situations. And every week it was something different and weird. And that was cool. It was that, and then you had G.I. Joe. I never watched Transformers. People think I'm weird when I say I watched My Little Pony rather than Transformers. I had no interest in Transformers. MLP, for me, hit that weirdness vibe that was very much Alice in Wonderland. So I enjoyed that. And when it transitioned over into Tales, I kept watching. And here's what I like about Tales. The animation improved. The dialogue improved. The voice acting improved. What failed was that they went to this slice of life high school thing where it's like, I'm in high school. This is not going on at my high school, and I don't like the people at high school. On top of everything else, they got rid of the magical elements. There was virtually, it's basically all Earth ponies, all no magic, just, hey, the girls are trying to hit on the boys, and the boys are acting like jerks, and you got this guy with a football who's an asshole. That was pretty much it. It was to me, Tales was enjoyable enough because I enjoyed animation. So you remember, I'm coming at this from the animation angle. Grew up with Looney Tunes and all that. To me, this was just another cartoon, and it was decent for that. Then G3 came along, and I'm like, they gave them all lobotomies. What the hell? Once again, it was an improvement in the animation.
And once again, thank you for proving my point.
Well, this is the half that I said that I agreed with Bliss on.
Okay.
G3 and then the infamous G3.5 basically became insipid. It went downhill in terms of writing. The dialogue is out the window. Just, oh my God. And yet it was clear that they had put the money in to get better animation than they had used for G2. So to me, it's like they're talking down to little girls now. They don't think little girls can understand the complex. Maybe they're going for the pre-high school crowd now because G1.5 didn't sell that well. Okay, and then we get into 3.5. They're actually going gabba gabba goo boo at this point.
Yeah.
And the animation took a hit.
And that always drove me nuts too. And I've mentioned this multiple times on the show before, as well as in some of my videos. But I'm seeing new names in the chat, so I'm going to say it again. Don't ever talk down to your audience. And even if you are aiming something at kids, that should just do something for your theming and the level of explicitity that you go into certain things. But it should not change the way you talk. Kids will. If you talk to them like adults, they will learn to think and talk like adults. They can handle it. And I
was the same thing as Bliss with G4.
Mm-hmm.
I avoided it for the longest time until I kept seeing. And the thing is, I was following 4chan at the time. I was not a 4chaner, but I would drop in to see what was going on because sometimes there'd be some funny or goofy stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And they're talking about it. I'm like, what's going on with these guys?
Mm-hmm.
And that's what got me to start watching. I was like, oh, damn, this is actually really good.
What? There was a famous quote that Walt Disney said, and I can't remember for the life how it went, but he said it best on the terms of you're doing a cartoon right when all generations can enjoy it. More or less, that's what it was saying. That was the point of the message. I just can't for the life of me remember how he said it.
I think it was something along the lines of if you're writing for everyone, you're not going to leave out anyone.
Exactly. I mean, maybe I'm just biased that I do like where Disney's coming from in that regard, though, because, yeah, you're not leaving anybody out as a result to your content. Well, and again, I know Hasbro is a toy making company first before it's a television show, series or studio. I get that. But at the same time, it's just look at I mean, if G4 is any example, look how successful it's been because it's been it catered to all ages unintentionally, but now that they see what it can do, you think now that going forward they'll attempt to keep doing that now. I don't know, but
and they sold more toys.
Yeah, and sell even more toys.
I'm not entirely sure that's true, because here's the thing I take issue when it comes to the Pre-G4 hate. A lot of people view Friendship Magic as sort of having quote unquote saved the brand, saved the franchise. That is not true.
Nah.
G3 was wildly successful in terms of toy sales.
Yeah,
it did very well. G2 was a flop, at least outside of the UK anyway. So, and as you said, G1 was a moderate success, and it did really bring in a lot of new things for, animation and how it could promote, merchandise and everything. But yeah, G2 was a step in the wrong direction. But then G3 happened, and yeah, it sold very well. It made My Little Pony a worldwide success. So Hasbro had to have seen that and saw, okay, this is what will get us the money we need. And yeah, and as for G3.5, I think that's a bit more of a question mark. I'm not entirely sure if how successful that was. So on that front, maybe G4 was a bit more of a saving grace on that front, because G3.5, I don't know if it was that particularly successful. Though I can say that my younger sister actually did get one of the G3.5 toys, like one of those electronic baby pony toys.
They had a 25% revenue bump in the first 2 quarters after G4 launched.
Yeah, I think G4. I think in the short term definitely was a big boost, but I think it might have started overstaying its welcome. But I think that's a whole different topic.
Well, it ran for a decade, so yeah, I'm sure the luster wore off after a while. I'm just saying they did experience a major bump in sales.
Yeah. So I mean, I guess any new generation is probably going to get an initial bump, because I mean we're now going into a new generation, and I'm curious to see where that goes. But that, again, another topic. Would you say? What'd you say? Yeah. Would you say that the hate has somewhat lessened? Because here's the thing: I think G1 especially, like at least at first, definitely had received vitriol the least. Because let's be real, G4 was heavily inspired by G1.
I heavily agree. Yes, heavily agree.
Yeah. So yeah, would you say the hate overall has lessened? I would say yes.
Yes.
I would say the fandom matured somewhat.
Yeah,
well, in 12 years, I should certainly hope it does.
I mean, maybe I'm just sheltered because I have not seen any hate. I mean, the only ugly remarks that I have seen were from some of my family, only because they were weirded out that, why are guys liking this show? Oh, that's creepy.
Well, here's the thing, is because we got to compare it to the older generation, Generation 4 to the older generations. What the hate that you would see, like nobody would have accosted you at a convention, right? If you came dressed as Bliss, give me a character from one of the. If you came dressed as Minty, right? In a Minty costume, right? That wasn't going to happen. People might ask you what character that was, and then you tell them, "Oh, I'm Minty from A Very Minty Christmas," and they go, Oh, is that one of the older ones? I didn't see that one. That's probably what it would have gone to. But if you're talking about the older generations, that's a completely different thing, because what they're going to do then is they're going to go, yeah, that sucked. And everybody's going to agree. And then they're going to change the topic because they don't want to talk about how bad it was.
I've kind of had a different experience in that regard.
Tell me about it.
Occasionally I've heard people trash talking G1, and I'll just say, yo, Fizzy's my waifu. Back off.
I totally agree.
Fizzy!
I love Fizzy.
Fizzy's
definitely
awesome.
Yeah, Fizzy's definitely my favorite of the G1 ponies.
Oh, she's such a sweetheart. I must protect.
Now the closest the closest I ever got to pulling off a real life dragon shout is when I was at I think it was the first time I went to Everfree Northwest in 2013, and I was in a room full of bronies, and I called Bon Bon Sweetie Drops, and every head in the room turned on me. And I was like, yes, feed me your hate. That was
okay.
But yes,
honestly, I think maybe the biggest example of hate was just the long-running meme of rainbow dash dresses in style.
That too. Yeah, just the memes. And if you were to go somewhere like, say, Derpy Brewer, for example, if like for the longest time, for a while, if you were to see any image that was directly related to like G1, G2, G3, like a picture of the toys or something, it would often get a lot of downvotes.
I mean, I'm treating the hate thing as just as much as treating it like to everybody else who keeps telling me, oh, the fandom's dying, Generation 5 is bad, and it's like people have kept coming up to me and they'll say things like why G1, G2, and G3 is bad, and I would, for the most part, I would agree. Yeah, like the stories were bad, some of the animation was bad, some of the acting was atrocious. I'm going to agree with that. But hey, without these, we would not have G4, and we certainly wouldn't have G5.
Yeah, but that doesn't make them good.
It's also in comparison to what was available at the time. I mean,
exactly.
I'm sorry, but G4 is a very modern product. If you had something like Gravity Falls back in the 80s, it would still be considered legendary.
But it's like
Gravity Falls is pretty legendary, though, regardless of when it aired. Go ahead, Bliss.
Imagine if it had come out in the 80s, you'd hear nothing else.
But it's like I kept telling the haters, like I kept telling those that were screaming, oh no, the fandom's dying. No, it's evolving. It's changing. It's not dead. It's changing. Oh, but everybody's leaving it. I see people leaving it. So what? People leave fandoms all the time, and sometimes they even come back. It doesn't mean it's dead. It changes. And I can vouch for this because, again, I was there when it started.
Hello.
And you were literally there. I wasn't even born yet when it officially started, but still.
And let me tell you, as of the 90s, at minimum, I don't know how long this continued, but in the depths of G3, there were fan boards out there that were writing crack ship fics about G1 and G2 ponies. You had these people writing stuff about the Big Brother ponies dating each other and going out on shipwreck, or not shipwreck, goddamn, I'm trying to remember the guy's name. And all this stuff, people were doing fics about it. They were doing original artwork. It's just, it wasn't that big.
Oh, yeah. In fact, for anyone who's curious about, basically old MLP memorabilia, comics, and stuff like that, I highly recommend you look at Heck Yeah Pony Scans on Tumblr. It is... I'll post the link right now in the chat.
Again, I was sheltered back then. I didn't even know a fandom existed for MLP. I didn't. You ask 5-year-old, 10-year-old me, hey, are you part of the pony fandom? I'm going to be looking at you being like, what's a fandom? I didn't know what that was. I was sheltered. I wasn't even on the internet till I was 13, and even then, I only knew how to work email.
Now, just being completely open here, that part of the MLP fandom was tiny. It was like a splinter group. The main fandom was doing trading in toys. And that's why a lot of the older MLP fans look at G4 fans and feel left out or cast off because we're all about the animation. They're trying to talk about the toys and their interest in this character or that character or this release or, this rare version or a custom that somebody did. And people are just looking at them weird.
Right.
And yet they were here before us. So I mean, give the respect we're due.
So here's the thing: if somebody came up and said, my favorite generation is 3.5, newborn cuties, right? No lip syncs. The closest we get to an animation are Adobe Premiere keyframes on the legs and literal bobbleheads, right? I would try my best not to judge, but I would also be concerned for their mental health.
I would be like, I'm impressed.
I fully agree. Yeah, I fully agree. Newborn cuties is the lowest, point,
right? And it's
lowest point of MOP.
So if you talk about being a fan of the older generations, that's what you're that's what you're comparing yourself to. You're putting yourself in that group with that level of animation, and sure, it butterflied effect into what we know as the Brony fandom today, which is, saved countless lives and also wreaked untold destruction, right? Depending on who you ask. And I'm sure there's a bit of a balance to it. That doesn't change what it was, though.
I'm sorry, my animation that I flagged myself with is unicorns and earth ponies and Pegasi playing volleyball with bubbles.
Oh, that was cute.
Yes, it was.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
here's the thing. G1 definitely had potential. I will say the execution for some of its writing wasn't the best, especially given for its budget, and it was the 80s and everything. But I get the feeling. I mean, because here's the thing: Lauren Faust wanted to do those kind of stories in G4, but Hasbro just had different plans, and that's why she didn't stick around for very long.
Yeah.
But yeah, I definitely would like to see them, see some of these stories be given a second chance, because with better budgeting and better technology, I think you really could pull these stories off and really make them fascinating. And
I'm in full agreement with you, and it frustrates me to no end that G5 doesn't seem to be taking that route yet. I mean, it's too early to tell. But yeah, this is what I loved about G1 was the adventure and fantasy aspect, and that's what G4 got right.
For the most part.
But I also, I mean, I know maybe this is just me being a little too biased. Like, I want, and I can't always have what I want. I know. But this is what I loved about the pilot episode. The pilot episode was not afraid to challenge the kids at all. The pilot episode was scary for its time. But this is a pony show, and holy cow, there are dragons snapping at these ponies and grabbing them by their mane, and these poor creatures are being turned into monsters. That was terrifying.
Yeah,
that was awesome.
Give me that substance. Challenge me. Do not talk down to me. I'm as your audience. That's how we get a mutual respect going, and it's a sign of true quality. What were you saying, Calbeck?
No, that was me. I was just saying that was to be expected because that original MOP pilot, Rescue at Midnight Castle, was made by the same creators as the Dungeons and Dragons cartoon.
Yep, exactly.
And I did not even know about that until Doc pointed it. My friend Dr. Wolf pointed it out to me. I'm like, oh, it explains everything.
Yep. I've been waiting 20 years for somebody. Well, I shouldn't say 20 years, but I've been waiting a long time for somebody to notice that.
Yeah, and but it clearly can't be done. It didn't hurt the audience. It was good to challenge kids like that. It's good to challenge kids that in real life some scary things might happen. This is and it's okay. It's gonna happen. We just have to figure out how to deal with it. And Disney does this all the bloody time, Hasbro. What's your deal?
Well, Disney did it up to a certain point. I would say they started phasing that out right around the time ponies started becoming more popular, and they're horrified of they absolutely will not touch that kind of action ever again. Yeah, I know.
Let's ride a giant ship around a whirlpool and ram a squid lady in the gut with the bow.
Yeah, 1993, if I remember correctly.
Yep.
Like, I'm not gonna pass judgment on parents if they allow their kids to watch certain things that are not exactly age appropriate for them. But seriously, I've seen kids. I have seen kids watch scarier things, and these are 5 to 10-year-olds. I've seen kids watch Venom. I've seen kids watch South Park. Don't ask me why, but clearly younger generations these days can handle a lot of stuff. So
that is nothing new. When I was a preteen, I was dropped off to see the movies Heavy Metal and Wizards. I think they were at the time playing back to back.
Woo.
Because and the reason why, well, they're cartoons. They're for kids.
Yeah.
That was the mentality. It's just
that mentality of all animation is for kids was so abused at that time.
Calbeck went into that theater and came out with a boy and came out with a full beard and his voice like 3 octaves.
Oh yeah.
Heavy metal isn't for anybody, much less kids.
Oh, no, may I also just point out that I'm a huge Last Unicorn fan and always have been.
Yeah! Yes!
We were talking. I mean, that's the original My Little Pony, is it not?
Well, I mean, unless if you want to count the unicorns and such in that Pastoral Symphony segment.
Actually, you know what? No,
there's absolutely nothing girly about the Last Unicorn.
There is not.
Okay,
there is not.
I have a confession. Y'all are probably gonna hate me for this. I haven't seen The Last Unicorn.
No,
I'm dragging you into the back room right now. Let's go.
Yeah,
I'm not gonna hate you.
We're gonna make you watch that.
I promise I'm not gonna hate you because I've learned not to hate all my friends who haven't seen Aliens.
I haven't seen Aliens.
Oh my god! Okay,
but
game over, man. Game over.
Here's the thing. I only acknowledge the first Alien movie, but that's besides the point. Here's
oh my heart.
Yeah, actually, you know what? Screw that. I was wrong. The original My Little Pony is not The Last Unicorn. I can't believe I screwed up my own lore. The original My Little Pony is the famous Mr. Ed.
Don't start me on that because that was a good show.
It was a good show.
I actually have seen some of that, and yeah it was definitely entertaining.
I did a video on that just to be a hipster. And,
by the way, praise Peter Beagle. He finally got his rights back. Woo!
Yeah.
Thank God.
So anyway, here's a question I wanna ask you guys before we get into audience participation. Here is let's say Friendship is Magic never existed, right?
Right.
So we're back in.
Hang on a second. Part of my brain just melted. Okay, I'm good.
Yeah, so we're gonna time travel. We're gonna go back to August 21st. 2010, right? So Friendship is Magic isn't going to air for another month. Okay. You guys are, we're going to say you guys are all fans of the previous generations, right? Which 2/3 of you are.
Well, I am.
Okay, yeah. So you all are. I'm off doing, I don't know, probably getting in a gang fight somewhere. But when someone talks to you about about My Little Pony, right? And they are clearly put off by your admiration of that franchise. Be honest with yourself. Is it because of its quality or is it because it was meant for girls? Let's go around
meant for girls.
Okay, so we got one. Bliss, what do you think?
Yes.
Yes? Okay, elaborate.
Yes. Well, I've heard it from all sides, honestly, and I can also agree with all sides. Yes, it was targeting girls. Yes, the stories and sometimes the acting is atrocious, and sometimes the animation it's not up to par. But it is what it is, and it still is a special place in my heart regardless. So I can agree on all sides.
Okay. And Sazer, what do you think?
Could you repeat the question really quick, just to make sure I understand?
Okay. Do people hate the previous generations because it's geared towards young girls, or because it actually objectively is of lesser quality, and they're wondering, what's wrong with you for liking something that stinks so bad.
I think, especially for the time, it definitely was. I think it was mostly because it was for younger girls.
Mm-hmm.
I would say that much. And I said in the past that, I never really felt that, I guess, gendered pressure. You can only like boy things or you can only like girl things or whatever. I never felt that because I was homeschooled.
Mm-hmm.
Just to further elaborate that, when I was a little kid, I loved playing on the computer, playing computer games a lot. One game that I actually did play on the computer and I felt no shame about was Barbie Fashion Designer.
That does not surprise me. You're like the 5th guy I heard that played that as a kid, and I'm always surprised about that, and yet I'm not. Anyway, continue.
But well, there's not really much to continue. That's just my point. It just goes to show some, the G3 video VHS tapes, stuff like that. Just when I was a little kid, it just never really clicked with me. I never really felt any shame. It didn't come across my mind as something that I should feel embarrassed about.
I should clarify something on this, however. I specifically said because it's for little girls, not because it's for girls. If you, back in the day, and you put this originally in the context of there's been no G4 and somebody asks you, why are you interested in this stuff? And they're looking askance at you. That's why. Because it's for little girls. And like I said, when I got into it, I started in high school as a male. If you are a male and you are interested in anything involving little girls or that is targeted as little girls, you are thought of as a creeper. It's not a gender assignment thing. It is a sexual predation thing is usually how it's interpreted. And people don't even get into G3's quality or anything like that because they've never approached it. They've never seen it. They have no interest in it because there's this pre-existing, this is for little girls, this is not for me. And even if it weren't the sexual predation thing, there's also sort of a
there's a disdain towards childishness, which brings me to one of my favorite.
It's the same as watching glowworms. Okay, but go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I was about to say it just brings me to mind of probably one of my favorite quotes from C.S. Lewis. About the one about putting away childish things.
Well, yeah, that's and I'm sure you know this as well, Sazer, but he paraphrases a Bible quote. When I was a child, I dealt with childish things, and then when I became an adult, I put away childish things. And I don't like that quote because it twists the Bible verse and then says and adds to it and says and one of those things was caring about being seen as an adult or caring about being an adult, or you know what I mean.
It's also not the original intention of the Bible verse.
I know, and that's one of the reasons why that's like the one C.S. Lewis quote that kind of bugs me.
Well, I mean, everybody is misreferencing it in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
Its intent is like, okay, there's a point where you have to grow up and do adult things, and this is also for a biblical era audience. It's like, okay, if you're going to continue doing childish things when the crops need to get in and the family needs to get taken care of, that's the point. It's not the idea that you can't enjoy things that a younger generation does or that you shouldn't, or there's something spiritually or morally wrong with it. It's that you need to get other things done.
Right.
Well, yeah, you can. There's nothing wrong with being both, being a responsible adult, but also enjoying childish things, especially if you have children.
So I'm actually a fan of the C.S. Lewis quote because it's more aimed at a more modern audience that has more leisure time, where this sort of thing is possible and reasonable. So,
Calbeck, something you had mentioned is the predation aspect of someone who would be a fan of things clearly meant for younger girls. And that was something that I had forgotten about, but I certainly had known about it, and I've known about it for a long time because I've met people like that, right? Mm-hmm. That and this was 10, 15 years ago, and it's like, oh, you like this thing that's a little, I mean, you're a 40-year-old man, why do you, and then it turned out, yeah, they were they were aiming a bit low, if you catch my drift, right?
Even if you're an 18-year-old high school senior, it's the same mentality. Imagine that you're in high school and G4 never came out, and this came up.
Yeah, what I'm saying is that suspicion is not unfounded. So you don't judge anybody with that big of a brush, but like it happens, and we know it happens, and we have that subconscious fear. So at the very least, it's not an unfounded suspicion to look at someone a little side-eyed if they're into something that is clearly not meant for them.
Well, specifically if it is something meant for the opposite sex, and not only that, but the much younger opposite sex, the prepubescent opposite sex.
Right.
This is why it wouldn't even come up, because nobody, unless somebody quote unquote finds out and starts spreading the word around school, for example. So it never comes up in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's that presumption to begin with. So this is why for most people, they don't even approach the subject matter, because they are concerned that people will misunderstand it, and that is even assuming that they aren't the sort of person you're talking about.
Right. Well, the sort of person I'm talking about would probably not be aware of why what they're doing is wrong.
Well, if all they're doing is watching the show, there's
I mean, like, they might not be aware of why it's weird, right? And they might not be aware of why you probably shouldn't be connecting with your really young.
It's getting more confusing as we're going on.
Okay, but I think
we're starting to stray a bit.
All right.
The point is just that for most people who don't have an interest in it, there is that tendency to look at it side-eyed, because why would this person be interested in something quote-unquote meant for little girls? And the modern G4 fandom has gotten a lot of flack from so-called normies for exactly that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I know, and I think that's where a lot of the pre-G4 hatred has come from, was everyone else, all the normies, all the news media, was viewing them as weird, and they had to sort of, it's a sense of insecurity. They have to feel justified, and like, no, that's the old MOP stuff. We don't like that. Do you get my point?
Yep.
Yeah.
And I'll bring this up. I think another aspect that, I think one area of, I guess, I shouldn't necessarily say hatred, but definitely mockery that I've witnessed is, and I think you were involved to some extent, Brony, is have any of you seen the Mystery Brony Theater 4000?
I tried to get Evan on the show tonight, but yes, I know all about that. He's a good friend of mine.
Never seen.
I don't think so.
Yeah, it's basically just a group of Brony friends, Mystery Science Theater 3000 style, watching old MLP stuff.
Yeah, check out that stuff, guys. It's really funny.
Yeah, it is fun to watch, but yeah, they definitely don't make it any secret that they do like, poking fun at it and making a mockery of it and such. And I do wonder if that kind of contributed to some of the hatred. I shouldn't really say hate,
okay, so here's the thing. They started coming out with that stuff way after most of the pre-G4 hate had reached its peak in the Brony fandom. They're late, and while they make really good stuff, the metrics aren't there. Like they don't have a very big viewership. I would say they're highly underrated. But that being said, there's no way the few thousand views they get on each of their videos is having that much of an influence on the wider fandom.
Yeah, true. I'm just saying that's just one aspect that I'm one part of it.
It might be a reflection of that mentality,
I'm not even
Yeah,
sure
yeah,
about
yeah,
that.
yeah. I would say it's an
Because-
inflection, not a cause or anything.
Yeah.
I'd like to point out that the Mystery Science 3000, Mystery Science Theater 3000 stuff originally was born out of a love of that old cheesy stuff.
Good point. I just wanted to bring it up.
Yeah, and
And also-
I really wish I could have gotten
promotion.
I really wish I could have gotten Evan on the show to give his point of view, because he, I mean, made a good chunk of his YouTube career out of these things. Anyway, what else was there? There was one more thing I wanted to ask before I got into the audience participation. I'm trying to remember. I lost my train of thought. Oh, well, not a big deal. I'm sure it'll hit me again at a later time. So we might as well get into audience participation here. So if this is your first time watching the show, throughout the course of the stream, I've been reading the chat. I've encouraged these guys to do the same. And if you've asked any interesting questions or had any interesting comments, I've saved them. And we're going to read through them now. So towards the beginning, Pony Cordero said, everything before Generation 5 is bad. That's a deliberate shot at me. Cordero, get out of here and go enjoy your honeymoon, you cracker.
Wow.
Yep. And let's see here. Badre Bally says, G1 actually had the guts to kill off villains 1 or 2 times, unlike the boys shows like G.I. Joe. That's an interesting thought. What do we think about that?
I never thought of it that way.
I've never seen G.I. Joe, so I can't contribute.
I can. Well, I live with Princess Heather Blossom, so I have seen G.I. Joe, and yeah, that's true. I mean, they'll blow the heck out of a fighter jet, right? With Star Wars laser beams, and then 3 seconds later you see parachutes, right? Every time a plane goes down, parachutes, right? And everybody who gets shot gets right back up, and then they usually run away, right? Never seen a villain go down in G.I. Joe. They sort of did it in one of the movies, but then they I think retconned it. And I'm talking about old G.I. Joe.
Standing shoulder to shoulder with fully automatic laser weapons, charging at each other to get close enough to get into fistfights.
Right, and then they don't even throw punches. They just do WWE wrestling moves, which is arguably worse. I mean, if I had to choose between getting punched or getting a freaking tombstone pile driver, I think I'd prefer to get punched. But anyway, yeah, that's true. G.I. Joe, Transformers, what was it? Lone Star, villains almost never.
30-30 was the bomb.
Yeah, exactly. So that kind of thing. So
Brave Star.
It's the ultimate irony that G.I. Joe, a show that's centered on war and and guns and everything and military, was more wussified than the pastel colored pony stuff.
Yeah,
like I said, I slotted those two together.
Now in 2009, G.I. Joe had a movie called Resolute, and they killed like half the main cast in that movie. So many named and faced characters died in that movie. Now they were all like the D tier characters, but 3 or 4 characters that you knew got axed in the first act.
Lightning, was it Porcina who got turned to glass?
No, that was her cronies.
Wait, what was for what episode? I'm sorry.
I'm trying to remember.
He's talking about the Glass Princess.
Talking about G1 villains who bought it, who basically died.
I can only think of a few villains that were actually killed off. I mean, the obvious one being T-Rex. Technically, the Smooze.
Was the Smooze living though?
Did Squirk die? I'm trying to remember that one.
I'm not sure.
I want to say Tambalon. Well, Tambalon was the city.
Well, Grogar didn't die. He was just banished with the rest of his Tambalon kingdom.
Yeah, I'll agree with that. So maybe only a couple of villains might have actually, quote unquote, perished, but that it's still heck of a lot ballsier than say what G4 and Little and G5 will probably do.
Transformers would
Yeah.
kill characters in the movies, but then they'd show up again in the next episode, like that took place after the movie, which was annoying to say the least.
Yeah.
I
mean,
Didn't I see you disintegrated in a hail of gunfire, Uncle Beta?
Yeah, my favorite one was a one will stand, one will fall, right? And that's the beginning of the movie, and they killed Optimus Prime dead, right? And then they came out with episodes later, and there's Optimus Prime. So
Well, I actually think that the reason that they could get away with it more in My Little Pony was because of the Alice in Wonderland effect I was mentioning, where you had these wild adventures that were basically one-offs. They were not bringing the villain back, so...
Right. Paladin Pony T says, to everybody, what are shows with different generations that you love? Okay, so I know I just got done talking all kinds of trash on G.I. Joe, but in 2010, right alongside Friendship is Magic, G.I. Joe came out with Renegades. And that show was really freaking good. So there's that. The new iteration of DuckTales was pretty good. It's not like I haven't seen all of it, but I haven't disliked anything that I've seen. It's what do you guys think? You guys got anything to add to this list?
Well, I'd have to agree with most of what you just said. It's not often that a cartoon gets rebooted, although that's been happening a lot more of late.
Mm-hmm.
I can't really think of a reboot, if anything. Oh gosh, the last time I gave one of my favorite series a chance on their reboot, it was only 4 episodes, and it clearly failed and flopped, and that was the Rainbow Bright reboot.
Oh.
And no, in all seriousness, this reboot had no right to be this bad for its current year, or when it came out. I think it was 2014, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
It should not have been as bad as it was.
The talent was certainly available.
You had the talent, you had the technology, but why? Why did you... put it this way. Ignoring the obnoxious, over-the-top acting that was just in no rhyme or reason should have been horrible, because I will tell you right now, they talked down the audience, the acting. That was how bad it was. But the animation was so bad that I cannot in good conscience tell people to go watch it, especially if you have a serious eye condition or medical condition where it could cause epilepsy or seizures.
That bad.
It is that bad. So put it this way. So again, I know I mentioned Dr. Wolf a lot, but he's a good friend of mine. So he can't look at bright lights or fast moving images for a too long period of time because he has a condition where he'll get severe headaches. I was about to watch the video for the first episode, and then the intro was just god awful, and he asked me, "What are you watching?" And I showed him the intro. 5 seconds, immediately he had to turn it off. It was that bad. And that was just the intro.
Goodness.
Now, if I was to start complaining about new generations of cartoons that I had seen the first time around, I would have to go back to the 1970s. Because like I said, that was the era when the toyetic thing really started taking off, and anything that seemed to do well would get rebooted and rebooted and rebooted and rebooted. And every time they did it cheaper.
Mm-hmm.
I'm surprised. I'm surprised. I'm surprised no one's brought up Pokemon.
Well, I'm not a Pokemon fan. Never have been.
Pokemon.
Fist bump again, dude. I hate Pokemon.
Pokemon.
I don't necessarily hate it. I just never got into it.
Pokemon is just one continuation. It doesn't really. I mean, the games technically, but I thought we were talking about shows.
Yeah. Well, even in terms of the show, but even then, I haven't really been keeping up with it, so I can't really comment on it.
All right.
And yeah, it's funny that we've been talking about pre-G4 hate, but I think over the years, and especially in more recent years, I think more and more people have grown to just accept and even appreciate and have a bit of nostalgia for them, because, well, for one thing, G4 borrowed heavily from G1. For one, we had T-Rek, we had the Smooths, we had Grogar, quote unquote Grogar. So yeah, there definitely is an audience for that, and even right now in G5, if any of you have been keeping up with the Tell Your Tale YouTube series, like they even make callbacks there. Like there was like a little filly who I think is called like Seashell something, who is from G1, and probably the most noticeable one is Posey, who is a G1 pony, who was actually the inspiration for Fluttershy, and it's just so funny to see her here, and have quite a bit of on-screen presence, and even be referenced by name. So, yeah, I think there is definitely a growing audience of just past generations in general of nostalgia, and I think Hasbro is aware of that.
Posey is in. I have missed this.
Yes, yes.
Is she a mummy?
No, she's not a mummy. She's just a perfectly normal.
How many thousands of years old is she?
Well, that depends. Is this
because okay? Remember, G5 is definitely after G4. It's a long time after G4, and G4 is definitely a long time after G1.
G4, last I checked, was not a continuation of G1.
G4 specifically brings in elements from G1 as ancient legends.
Okay, but
I'm sorry, T-Rek all the way through. Seriously, it's not a direct port, but if you're gonna say this is the G1 Posey, G1 from G4 standpoint is thousands of years ago.
He said based on G1, not literally from G1.
Okay, so inspired by that's.
You get my point. I mean, we've had different Applejacks throughout all the generations.
This is actually pissing me off.
They actually mentioned General Firefly in G4 too. I kind of went, what?
Yeah, that was cute.
I was like, huh?
That's a cute reference, and of course, what was it? Gusty the Great,
who was not involved in the Tambalon crisis.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. That's what's so funny about that.
Alrighty then. Rusty Helm was helping out Lightning Bliss here. He quotes Disney. The quote is, "You're dead if you only aim for kids. Adults are only kids grown up anyways."
That's a great line.
There you go.
Yeah, that's the quote. Thank you, sir. Yes, I love that quote.
Let's see here. He also says, Lightning Bliss, to be fair, almost every reboot during the 2010s, Teen Titans Go, Powerpuff Girls, Thundercats, not the anime adaptation, but the Roar, I'm guessing he's referring to, they were all really bad. Okay, Snowflake says, what is one moral lesson that stuck with you from generations 1, 2, and 3?
I mean, to be honest, I didn't watch G3 simply because I took one look at the animation and said nope.
Good job, son.
Gen 1. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, Gen 1. Again, I'm a sucker for the pilot episode mostly, but I remember one of my other favorite episodes was the Golden Horseshoes. And I think that was a 4-episode combo parter.
Mm-hmm.
Which was almost unheard of at the time.
Yeah, it was a 4-episode combo where basically one of the unicorns named Mimic was quite literally fading away, like magically fading away. And Megan and the other ponies at Spike went on this adventure to find these magical golden horseshoes to bring her back. Or to save her because she was losing her magic, I guess. I think that was the illness. But if I remember anything from that 4-parter as a kid was that it didn't matter how hard things got, or how many obstacles they were up against. They didn't stop. They were going to save their friend, and I thought that was beautiful. And even as an adult today, I could still find that beautiful and nice. I honestly can't remember anything from G2 that taught me a lesson, because I found the characters so cynical, especially towards boys. I just couldn't get around that. They reminded me of the preppy, mean bully girls at school. That's why I didn't enjoy G2 as much. And then I avoided G3 because of the obvious animation. So, and I could go on and on about G4, but anyway, I hog the same too much.
How about you, Calbeck?
Well, when it comes to G1, I actually have to agree with Lightning there, but a little bit more. For me, it's a little more personal because the family motto is "in arduo attendit," which means in the face of adversity, tenacity. And that, I think, sums up most of the morals of G1. They're up against all these different threats. It's a little girl and a bunch of equines of various types who usually are a little scatterbrained and not necessarily well organized, not used to defending themselves. And she organizes them, and they fight back. Or they negotiate, or they work something out.
All right.
So, yeah. As for G2, I would actually say that there is a bit of a moral in there, but it's kind of a samey sort of thing you saw with a lot of the high school dramas of the day, which is just be more considerate. Because most of the problems that they have in that show are people not being considerate causing the issues.
Well, we got a lot of that in Friendship is Magic too, but at least it had some kind of resolution and actual life, applicable situation there, and yeah.
It was there. You just had to dig for it.
How about you, Sazer?
It's kind of hard to say because the previous generations didn't particularly G1 were not really centered on morals. It was more all about the adventure. I've said this in a panel once, and I think I described it best this way. G1 was an adventure cartoon with some slice of life interpersonal elements thrown in, whereas Friendship is Magic is the complete inverse of that. It's a slice of life interpersonal show with some adventure elements thrown in. Do you think that's fair?
Yeah, I'd say that's fair.
Yeah. And as for a lesson, I mean, one that I think is a little bit interesting, honestly, is from G3, the Princess Promenade. Do you know that, Calbeck?
Yeah, I'm familiar with it.
Yeah, I kind of especially after what we've gotten in G4, I think this lesson is just more interesting. Is what it means to be a princess and everything, and your hair, and whatever heritage you may have, it ultimately does not matter. Because it's kind of funny because I think that actually addressed the whole what does it mean to be a princess thing a little better than how Friendship is Magic handled it with Twilight. And that I think that's saying a lot. What do you think?
That might be a reasonable take on it. I think to me a lot of the G3 stuff was basically, I'm remembering that there were basically mini movies, like they were hour-long specials, and there were just a bunch of them. It wasn't really a episodic show per se, and it wasn't short enough to do the same kind of content that we would see in other shows. So it was very unique in that regard. And the production values were higher. That's mainly what I remember. Trying to remember the details of what happened in things like Princess Promenade or Very Merry Christmas, though. Well, I think that the episode length was too long for what they were covering, and it tended to drag out, and I would zone out.
Huh, I didn't know this. I'm just looking up the Wikipedia page for Princess Promenade. The film is notable for being the MOP animation that was sent to Lauren Faust in the hopes of retooling the MOP series. Interesting.
Oh, that's the one that she would have built the original model designs off of.
Yeah.
Okay, that's why there was a bit of a resemblance.
Alrighty then. Rusty Helm says to me, he says, Bronny, I also noticed that Disney started moving away from horror elements when they stopped doing 2D animation. I don't think it's a coincidence. You can do a lot more horror in 2D than 3D. So here's my theory on that. 3D in some ways is cheaper to produce, and like in some ways cheaper and easier, but in other ways also not cheaper and easier, but the net is cheaper and easier. So there you go. And it sold really well for some reason. I don't know why. I do not particularly enjoy 3D animation, especially these days. I think it all looks the same. So people, by and large, more people went to go see 3D animations. So between those two things, now whether or not it's tied to my next theory is certainly up for debate. Here's the thing about working at Disney. In order to work at Disney, you have to drink the Disney Kool-Aid. You have to live, breathe, and just like imagine the worst like stereotype of of an adult Disney fan, and the type of people that go to the Disney parks. And maybe because I'm Floridian, I'm more familiar with this archetype of person. But just imagine that, and all of the horrible things that implies. And that's kind of what you need to be in order to work at Disney. And that type of person is not very stable mentally or mature. And so they're going to tell the stories like we've been getting out of Disney for the past 5 to 10 years and is continuing to show a downward trend. So I don't know if the animation has anything to do with that. I think the animation is more about cheaper and easier to produce and also selling better and being more profitable. And then a separate issue are that being the types of stories we're getting out of Disney being just the type of people that Disney hires. Making those stories. So that's what I think. Does anybody want to add or take away from what I just said?
I would, but I'd like to hear what Bliss has to say on this.
Bliss is being very quiet.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Because I'm trying to eat dinner at the same time and paying attention. But what was the question?
So what did you hear my long rant about why Disney sucks in the modern day? I mean, Disney has always sucked, but particularly sucky in the modern day.
I am certainly one of those that definitely misses the 2D days.
Right. But did you hear my rant about why I think that is?
Yeah.
Okay, so what do you think about that?
It's like on one hand, it's like I want to agree with you, but on the other, they've had some good moments with 3D as well. I mean, I always ask myself that one question: was I entertained and did I feel something? I don't always feel something with each one of their films, but lately with things,
take the factor of animation out of it, because ultimately I really don't care about animation.
Okay.
I only care. I only care about the story, like how good's the story, how good's the acting. I can forgive a lot of bad animation for good story and good acting. So let's just address the stories here and why they're shying away from horror elements or things that might be more mature.
I honestly don't know why they're shying away from the horror aspects. I find that disappointing, but at the same time, I don't hate what they're doing either on the emotional level, at least, because again, I also have to take into consideration, do I feel anything? And like particularly with like at the moment, number one, one of my favorite 3D films, and technically this is Pixar, not Disney, so but whatever, same thing. I don't know. They work for Disney. Who cares? But like movies like Inside Out and recently Encanto, on an emotional level, both those films made me cry. And and technically Encanto did hint at some death scenes, so I can't really completely rule that out.
Well, hint, they just didn't put it on screen.
Yeah, they just didn't put it on screen, but it's there. We know what happens.
Yeah,
but
we watched
yeah,
that. We watched that dude get iced.
Yeah. But it's like on one hand, I wish they wouldn't be too shy about it. Maybe they're worried about it looking too realistic, unlike with a cartoon, it's not as realistic, so kids can separate the two apparently. But they fear kids can't do that with 3D. Come on, that's silly.
We're talking about the same company that made Fantasia with giant Satan coming out the mountain and blowing things up.
Or how about showing Mufasa's dead body?
Yeah, stabbing Ursula. I mean, the list goes on here.
Yeah.
Or how about Hunchback of Notre Dame?
Oh my
one of my
god!
favorites.
But my point. I'm just see the irony. Oh, Hunchback of Notre Dame. Oh my god! Yes, literally. Anyway, I don't know why they're doing this. Is it because they're afraid that kids won't be able to separate it because it's 3D or something? I don't flippin' know. I don't know why they're doing that. Kids are not stupid. They're smart these days, especially with technology getting more and more advanced. So quit stupefying the movies because you're afraid of the kids. Parents are not going to like it or something. Like, okay, yeah, we're kind of in the stretch of entitled parents and whatnot, but
Mhm.
I actually don't think that's it. I think it's a much more endemic problem that's going on throughout the industry, and it's not just Disney. What we're seeing right now, just across all forms of media in this regard, is very high production values. Like we're seeing tons of movies and TV shows and just products in general that are coming out with really high production values. They've got the people who know what they're doing, but it's tied to a lack of, I should say, not so much a lack of vision, an overexpression of vision at expense of actual story. We're seeing very shallow stories coming out. It's like the writers got pushed to the back of the room because they're saying what we really just need is gosh, wow, awesome graphics and set pieces, and we're going to have this huge battle, and there's going to be explosions, and it's Michael Bay syndrome gone wild.
Mm-hmm.
I would have to say that a lot of Michael Bay films at this point are better written than a lot of stuff coming out.
I think it's also just a fact of a lot of these filmmakers are trying too much to appeal to everyone.
Not just domestically either. I think it has to do with some of the things that we've been seeing where various characters get written out of movies or they're cast into movies in roles where they can be easily removed for certain audiences overseas.
You can say China. We don't play the censorship game on my channel.
I'm not just talking China.
Okay.
I said certain because I'm thinking 3 or 4 different major markets.
Oh yeah, you're the Middle East also. Yeah.
Middle East, India, China. I mean, you're talking billions of people who might be watching the film, but then you're seeing characters getting ripped, and that means the story gets ripped. Things get dumbed down. It's almost like Hollywood is turning into Bollywood.
Yeah, like we just like. I really hope that. I mean, I fear that I don't know how much longer Don Bluth is for this world, but we really need to take more inspiration from him.
Which version of Don Bluth?
Original.
Thank you.
Yeah, definitely original.
But even his newer stuff, I think, has more edge than what we're getting now.
Land Before Time, Don Bluth, that showed the mother brontosaurus getting freaking stomped on and eaten.
That
Sparkly.
movie taught me about dealing with death, and I thank it.
Mm-hmm.
I remember when this happened. I saw Littlefoot's mom die. It was horrible. I was probably 6 years old when it clicked that she's never coming back. I bawled my little eyes out, and I remember running to my mom and grabbing her and screaming, I don't want you to go. I don't want you to die. I don't want you to die.
Mm-hmm.
Because in my mind, I went from 0 to 100 that, oh no, one day I might lose my mom. I can't deal with that. I don't want that to ever happen. And this was a great thing for me to go through because I was able to have a bonding experience with my mom and her sitting me down and explaining to me that, yeah, death is a thing and it comes for us all in the end, but it doesn't have to be a bad thing. And it doesn't mean I'm going to be forever gone. Remember what the movie showed you? And I said, yeah, but she wasn't there. And he's like, wrong. She was there, wasn't she? Mm-hmm. Yeah. She was in his heart, wasn't she? Yeah. Well, that's where I'll always be. And moments like that are important for children and growth. They need to understand and learn this stuff.
Yeah, it's better to get that.
Sheltering them.
It's better to get that out of the way when you're younger and you can recover from it, than when you're in your 20s, 30s, 40s later, and you never had. And now it's just going to hit you so much harder because you never had anything to compare it to.
Well, they may not even be able to cope. They may not be able to handle it all, and when that comes down to it, they're not going to be able to function in what you quote unquote normal society.
Well, most of them can't do it anyway.
This kind of concerns me coming back to G5 because even in G4 we had stuff like with Tank going to sleep episode. It wasn't even Tank dying, but all the reactions were there, all the coping and the loss and everything.
Yeah, and that drove me nuts. And then they did the same thing with the divorce episode in season 8. It's like, listen, say the word if you're gonna.
I totally 1000% agree.
I'm not griping about it. I'm saying at least they covered it. I'm concerned that G5 won't hit anything even close to that.
Well, here's a funny thing. Tanks for Their Memories is a funny episode in my opinion. I think its conflict is crap because I appreciate what it's trying to do, but because it can't go all the way, it really makes the message a lot weaker. Because it's like they're all like that whole scene where they're all bawling their eyes out. I was just laughing because I'm like, I could not take any of this seriously at all. And what's funny is that in G1, there's an episode where all the ponies take care of a giant puppy, and Dinah, I think it was her name. I don't remember. But anyway.
And the song was based on what do you do with a problem like Maria?
Well, and eventually, once the dog grows up, she finds her family again, and they have to say goodbye. That had more impact than Tanks for the Memories did, in my view. Because I think G4 was, for lack of a better term, deathly afraid of death, even for something like The Perfect Pair. And I like Perfect Pair. I love what it was trying to do, but I think, this could be a whole Brony's debate in and of itself. Is what should you be able to get away with? Like, I think maybe you've had a Brony's debate about this before, about what should kids be exposed to and stuff like that.
Yeah, to a degree. We've talked about it before.
Yeah, my point was that at least G4 touches on these things. I don't see that happening with G5.
Well, I think.
Well, that remains to be seen.
It's kind of hard to say. Yeah, it's still too early to say. Though I do kind of share your skepticism. I'm not sure if G5 will, but then again, G4 barely did.
The reason being is because it seems to be going in the direction of centering on concepts that are rooted in social media. And I'm not just saying that because they have iPhones and do the whole, TikTok version of things, but that shot through the whole thing, and the way that they act together is like they're on camera for a TikTok, even when they're not on camera. It just is presented as the default. And I just have this feeling like they want to go for this perpetually upbeat, always on Zoom sort of look to it. And the entire movie kind of struck me like that.
Yeah. I mean, if something just wants to be, happy-go-lucky and all that stuff, that's fine, but stick with that. If you want to touch on darker subjects, go all out with that. Pick a lane is what I'm trying to say.
Agreed.
Yeah. And, I mean, we could even have a whole debate on the whole phrase, speaking of Don Bluth, his famous line, kids can handle anything as long as you give it a happy ending. Do you think that's a good saying?
It's certainly interesting.
I was able to handle a lot more.
I think all things have their time and place. So let's see here. I've got one more comment from Snowflake. Can you, and I'm pretty sure it's directed at me, can you admit one good thing that came from the older generations? I would guess the concepts of their villains that got pulled into G4. And Tyrek was certainly a lot more brutal in G1 than he was in G4.
Mm-hmm.
So
he's a straight up D&D villain.
Yeah. So I'll give it that. Yeah. And with that was all the chat that I had saved. Did anybody else see anything that they wanted to touch on?
Well, Dag 1984 was talking about the graphic death scenes from Cars 2. Cars being shot, crushed to death, and blown up. I kind of wanted to touch on that because Cars has kind of a little bit of a weird history that it seems almost nobody knows about.
Tell me.
It didn't originate with Pixar. It's actually a Disney property. And the reason for that is it's actually about the only Disney property that they allowed the copyright to lapse on. It originates with a Disney short from 1954 called Susie the Little Blue Coupe. And if you look it up on YouTube, the whole thing's available. It's the Cars design. The windshield has eyes, everything, but humans are in this universe. And the Cars are very clearly property. What you have with the Cars franchise is an outgrowth from that, removing the humans, and it's like, okay, what if the Cars just build their own society, but it still has all these trappings of something humanity left behind, which makes it really weird. And in the original show, or I should say the original short, the Cars also die. There are junkyards. There are scrap yards. The imminence of death as a car nears the end of its life, and also the possibility of renewal, because at the end of it, Susie is rebuilt from a junkyard as a hot rod.
Oh, well, that's much more uplifting than the Brave Little Toaster.
It ends great, but it's like towards the end, it gets very grim. Lots of storm, darkness, just this impending feeling of doom, and then this kid walks through a junkyard as she's just rusting away in the background, throws the guy a few bucks, and drags her off to a garage to soup her up. And it's like, okay, yeah, but that's where Cars actually comes from. And so this idea of the Cars being mortal creatures that can be shot, crushed to death, and whatever, comes from the original Disney content.
Interesting. All right. Did anybody else have anything they wanted to touch on before we wrap this up?
I mean, I will say, if anyone is curious about G1 in particular and everything, I'll link here to my friend's channel who hasn't been active in a long time. I don't know if he'll be. I don't know if he'll ever be making any more YouTube content. But if you're curious about, I guess this is the go-to G1 review guide. If you want,
and drop that link right in the chat, and I'll put it. Let me see. I didn't
G1 Brony analysis.
Send it to me.
That's essentially what this guy is.
Send it to me on Discord so I can stick it in the description. Okay, so this was a lovely discussion. Went on a little long, but I like long discussions. So let's go around the table here. Tell me one thing you learned, and give me some wrap up your overall thoughts. We'll start with Sazer.
I'm not sure. I have learned a few things. I'm not sure how well I'll be able to remember them, but I'll simply say like this. Like, one thing I'll really quickly touch on. we should not group G1, 2, and 3 into the same pool. No, they're very distinct from each other. I'll say this: G1 is, like, I think most people agree, is the best of the previous generations. You know, has great fantasy to it. Some of its execution, I think, is, you know, has aged because of its time frame.
Mm-hmm.
You know, My Little Pony Tales, yeah, just as Calbeck and Lightning Bliss have pointed out, you know, it's better in almost every regard except for the writing, which is, it's definitely a lot more, you know, childish.
Mm-hmm.
And then we of course got G2, which I don't really have any opinion on that, because all we have, never owned the toys, and we never got a cartoon. But from what I've seen, at least the designs look nice. I'll say that much. And then of course we got G3, which I think for the most part, I think it's just cute, innocent fun. Nothing great, but it's just nice little bit of junk food for your brain to enjoy. So that's my overall thoughts on it. And and on that front, I would say G3.5 is the very very sickening junk food.
Mm.
Yeah, there's such a thing as sticking your face into an entire bag of sugar.
Yeah, and yeah. And as I've mentioned before in the podcast, if you're curious about, you know, old My Little Pony, you know, memorabilia, history, comics, toys, and all that stuff, look up Heck Yeah Pony Scans on Tumblr. I highly recommend it.
All right. Bliss, one thing, summarize your thoughts and then tell us one thing you learned tonight.
Well, I mean, I always encourage new fans and old, or at least old in regards to Gen 4, to give G1 a chance, as well as, I mean, if you want to grin and bear it, G2, the My Little Pony Tales, simply to gain a little bit of history of why Gen 4 became so amazing. Because it's combining ideas from past seasons, from past generations, into what it is now. So don't be so quick to hate on it. If I learned anything from this, though, it's I was right all along. G3.5 is still horrible. I'm never gonna watch it.
I don't think anyone ever argued that. Even my friend Al1701, I think he even agrees that G3.5 Newborn Cuties is, there's nothing good about it.
It's meant for babies. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it is. It is a literal baby show.
It's for babies. I argue it's not for 2 years and up. Anything under 2 years, anything under 2 years old would probably enjoy it. But after that, there are better things for your kids to watch.
Yep. And Calbeck, tell us one thing, give us your final thoughts on one thing you learned.
I could probably sum this up by noting that some years ago I actually wrote a Fallout Equestria story where the premise was a 10,000-year timeline in which all of the Fallout stuff and all of the My Little Pony shows were canon. Everything was on the same timeline. And I had worked it all out. It was horrible.
Did you see... remind me, did you see G5, the G5 movie?
Yes, I did. Yes, I did.
Did you see? Yeah, did you see that one, like, really quick 1 second Easter egg of the G1 cartoon during that Danger song? Yeah.
Yes, I did. I've seen all, but long before that, I'd come to this conclusion where it was all on the timeline. It was all a thing, and these were all like genetic bastardizations of the crazed scientists at Big MT in Fallout New Vegas. Anyways, without getting too damn far afield, I want to put everything together into a big package. I like making things make sense. I like coherency. And I drove myself insane trying to do that with My Little Pony for all the generations. I had it for a split second, and then Discord showed up as Grogar.
Yeah, I was so
what are
invested in that, and when I will admit I did not see it coming, but at the same time, well, I guess we're not getting Grogar then.
This is the kind of person I am. Also, as far as what I actually learned tonight, I learned that Lightning has the cutest hiccup I've ever heard.
Excuse you?
You were hiccuping earlier on mic.
I think I missed it.
Oh, thank God then. Oh, also, no, just to say for
I happened to be looking at your OC at the moment. And it was like, did she? Oh, never mind. That was actually on mic.
Well, it's like also the fact that you're the OG here, correct? You were
Yeah.
well into the 60s or 70s. I'm sorry.
I was born early enough to watch the moon landing live on TV.
That's awesome. I love
amazing.
meeting older bronies. It just makes me so happy to know that yeah, it just makes me happy to hear that there's, besides the typical age range of the mid-20s, early 30s, because that's where I'm at basically, or I'm mid-30s technically, but still, you get what I mean. It's nice to meet an older brony.
It comes from a love of animation and a rejection of the idea that animation is just for kids.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah, totally agree.
Love it.
All right. So thanks to everybody for coming out. Bliss, did you have fun?
I'm sure you had fun dragging me in here, kicking and screaming.
Yeah. There's
Damn
that.
it, she did it again!
There's
I got it that time.
Calbeck, did you have fun?
I enjoyed myself thoroughly.
And Bliss, yes, I had fun dragging you in here, but that wasn't the question. The question was, did you have fun?
Did I have fun? Yeah, sure, why not? I'll give you that. It was relaxing, and I needed that.
Yeah, Sazer, did you have fun?
Yeah, sure, why not?
Oh man, you guys are both just leaving me hanging here. Did we do your topic suggestion justice, my friend?
For the most part, I would say yes. I'm too much of a scatterbrain. I'm really bad at talking off the cuff, as you guys have witnessed.
Not a problem. With practice, you'll get better. Hopefully, we'll get you all on another show sometime in the near future here. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in, especially if it was your first time viewing. I'm seeing a lot of new names in the chat. I hope I've earned your viewership. I definitely want to see if you want to hang out with me some more. Tomorrow night on Princess Heather Blossom's channel, we're going to be hanging out while she, I believe, plays some video games, some Undertale, I think. And I'll be in the chat just hanging out with her. Next Friday, we're going to be doing Friday Night Fights, which is a video game stream. So same time, Eastern Standard Time. Check out those. Princess Heather Blossom's stream is tomorrow night, 10 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time. If you want to be on one of my shows, I would love to have you. Let's just get you on the Patreon. For as little as $1 a month, you get into my server, where you can hang out with me, all the other patrons. There's some pretty good perks there, depending on which tier you're on. I'm very generous. I'm very grateful to all of my generous supporters on Patreon. I went to college. I can talk. Especially those on the $10 and up tier: Princess Heather Blossom, Shady Oak Ministry, Sim McConroy, Autoknight, Emerald Spencer, Senko, Kyle Christensen, DJ Skywalker, Rein-Kun, Morningstar, Pony Cordero, QFlash, Billy Henline, Alden, MacManx, EasyModeGamer, Keto Acrylic VA, and Dark Malcontent, author of the Metaverse series. Please check out all their links in the description. Don't forget, guys, we are fundraising for Heather Blossom's cat Knife. We need some help paying off those vet bills. So if you enjoyed the show and have a few bucks to spare, that would be greatly appreciated, and I'll do anything I can to repay the favor. With that, have a lovely weekend. Stay safe. God bless, and we will see you next time. Say goodnight, everyone.